You ever wonder what flips the script when she goes from being uncertain to suddenly the one chasing you? When you're no longer trying to get her attention because now she's trying to get yours. That shift doesn't happen by chance. It happens when certain psychological triggers are activated. Subtle things that speak to the emotional part of her mind, the part that responds to presence, mystery, and confidence. Most men chase. Few understand what makes a woman want to pursue. But when you do, everything changes. You stop begging for time, approval, or affection, and start attracting it effortlessly. In today's video, I'm going to show you 10 powerful psychological triggers that make her chase you, not because you played games, but because you understood how to become the man she can't stop thinking about. Let's dive in. Number 1. The power of emotional absence. When you stop giving her constant access to your emotions, something shifts. You create a space where she starts wondering instead of knowing. A stoic man doesn't disappear to punish. He steps back to preserve his peace. And in that quiet space, her curiosity grows. When you're always available, always explaining, always showing how you feel, there's no mystery. There's no edge. And whether she realizes it or not, she starts to take your presence for granted. Emotional absence doesn't mean being cold or cruel. It means being grounded enough to not hand over your peace just to be understood. You stop over-explaining. You stop chasing clarity from someone who may not even be listening. And instead, you let your absence speak. This is where the power lies. She used to expect a reply, a reaction, a reassurance. Now, there's just space. And space makes people think. It makes them reflect. She begins to notice things she once ignored. Your calm, your strength, your discipline. She replays old moments in her mind, not because you reminded her, but because you didn't. And the silence you once feared becomes the very thing that starts to echo in her thoughts. A man who follows Stoic principles doesn't react emotionally to everything. He understands that not every feeling needs to be voiced. Not every situation requires his energy. He sees emotional detachment not as a defense, but as clarity. When you live by that, you no longer try to control how others feel about you. You just live with purpose and let them feel your absence when they no longer have access to your presence. So, if you're wondering whether pulling back makes a difference, trust that it does. Not because you're trying to manipulate her emotions, but because you're protecting your own. You're not punishing, you're pausing. And in that pause, she might just realize what your presence really meant. That's the quiet power of emotional absence. It doesn't shout, but it always leaves an impression. Before we move on, I want you to take a second and reflect on this. Have you ever noticed how your absence made someone more aware of your value than your presence ever did? That's not a trick. It's the weight of emotional discipline. When you step back for peace, not attention, it leaves a different kind of mark. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. Have you experienced that shift before? Drop your perspective in the comments or just type, "Distance reveals truth." Let's see how many of you have felt the same shift. Number 2, scarcity over availability. Too much access kills desire. When you're always there, you're taken for granted. But when your presence feels earned, it becomes valuable. A Stoic understands that his time and energy are finite, and that's exactly what makes him magnetic. You see, when you offer yourself constantly, texting all day, always saying yes, showing up at the slightest request, you remove the sense of effort from the connection. It no longer feels special. It becomes routine. And routine, without meaning, chips away at attraction like slow erosion. What once felt exciting now feels expected, and expectations without appreciation? That's where desire fades. But when you step back, not from ego, but from self-awareness, you shift the entire energy. Suddenly, your presence commands attention because it's no longer guaranteed. She doesn't know if you'll reply right away. She doesn't feel entitled to your time. And that subtle uncertainty? It reintroduces curiosity. She starts to question, to miss, to want. Not because you withdrew to punish her, but because you remembered that your energy is a privilege, not a given. Think about it like this. If gold were scattered on every street corner, it would lose its value. Its worth comes from its rarity. And the same applies to your emotional availability. You're not here to prove your worth through constant presence. You're here to stand firm in your value. That's what Stoicism teaches us. Marcus Aurelius didn't say, "Please everyone." He reminded us to master ourselves and remain unmoved by what we can't control. And often, that includes how someone perceives your absence. So if you've been showing up more than she does, pouring more than she receives, ask yourself honestly, is this strength or fear in disguise? Fear of losing her, fear of being forgotten. But here's the truth. What's meant for you never needs to be chased down. Your calm withdrawal isn't indifference. It's self-respect in motion. Because often, it's the man who steps back with clarity, not anger, who leaves the deepest impact. And it's only in that space that she finally begins to see your value for what it truly is. Not just available, but exceptional. Number 3. Living with purpose, not for attention. Nothing draws a woman in like a man immersed in his own mission. When your energy is directed towards something meaningful, she feels the gravitational pull. Stoicism teaches that fulfillment comes from within, not from being seen, but from doing what matters. And that's the shift most men overlook. You don't need to be loud to be noticed. You don't need to post everything to prove you're making progress. A man rooted in purpose carries a quiet intensity. He's not chasing applause. He's building something that outlasts it. Think about it. When you see a man fully engaged in his craft, his growth, or his vision, there's a presence about him. He's not performing for attention, he's simply living with intention. That's attractive because it's rare. We live in a world addicted to validation, where everyone's trying to be seen. But the Stoic flips that. He doesn't seek the crowd. He seeks clarity. And ironically, that's what makes others turn their heads. Maybe your purpose is building a business, mastering a skill, or simply becoming more disciplined day by day. Whatever it is, when it's real, when it's personal, you stop needing to convince anyone. She'll feel it, not through what you say, but through how you move, through how you don't flinch under pressure, through how you disappear, not to hide, but to work in silence. Marcus Aurelius once said, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one." That's the essence here. Don't chase visibility. Chase substance. Because when a woman senses that your life already has meaning, with or without her, that's when you truly become magnetic. Not because you're trying to impress, but because you've already impressed yourself. And that is everything. So ask yourself, are you living to be seen, or are you living to become something worth seeing? Number 4. Unshakable emotional control. Your ability to remain centered when things get emotional tells her everything. She feels safe, yet challenged. When she can't throw you off course, you become a mystery. A Stoic doesn't react. He chooses his response with precision. And in today's world, where emotional reactivity is everywhere, that calm presence is rare and powerful. Imagine you're having a disagreement, And instead of raising your voice or trying to win the argument, you pause, listen, and speak with clarity. No ego, no defensiveness. That alone shifts the dynamic. She starts to see you differently, not just as a man she can connect with, but as someone she can trust in the storm. And it's in that stillness that your strength becomes obvious. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." That's the heart of unshakable emotional control. It's not about suppressing your feelings. It's about knowing which ones deserve your energy. And when you show that kind of restraint, not as a tactic, but as a way of living, you separate yourself from the noise. You're not cold. You're composed. You're not detached. You're deliberate. And that difference is magnetic. Because a man who doesn't get easily shaken commands respect, not by force, but by presence. And that's the kind of man people remember long after the moment has passed. If you've ever been in a situation where your calm made others uncomfortable, where your lack of emotional chaos made someone pause and reflect, then you know the quiet power we're talking about. This isn't about being stoic for show. It's about being so anchored in who you are that no external storm can pull you under. So let me ask you, have you ever seen a moment where your emotional control changed how someone treated you? Or when your stillness spoke louder than any outburst could? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Share your experience in the comments, or if this message hit home, just drop the words. Strength is in the stillness. Number 5. Silent standards speak loudest. Instead of explaining what you expect, you live it. And that's the difference between trying to impress and truly leading yourself. Anyone can talk about their standards, what they want, what they won't tolerate. But words are cheap when not backed by action. When you quietly uphold your values without needing to declare them, that's when people start paying attention. You don't have to shout your boundaries, you embody them. And that silent strength is unforgettable. When disrespect shows up, you don't debate it. You don't plead for understanding. You simply remove yourself, with grace, not with drama. That calm exit? It hits harder than any loud reaction. A woman might not get it right away, especially if she's used to attention-fueled responses. But eventually, she feels it. That shift from reaction to restraint leaves a powerful void, one filled not with anger, but with your absence. A presence she once felt deeply, now missing without explanation. Stoicism teaches us that our true power isn't in changing others. It's in commanding ourselves. So when you're tested, when someone pushes your emotional buttons, plays mind games, or gives you the silent treatment, you don't fall into the trap. You don't match chaos with chaos. You stay grounded. You choose peace, not to appear strong, but because you are strong. And strength doesn't need to perform. Imagine this. She tries to make you jealous, thinking you'll react. Or she withdraws, hoping you'll chase. But you don't. Not because you don't care, but because chasing drama is beneath the man you've become. You don't need to be loud. You don't need to explain. Your calm becomes the loudest answer. That's when everything shifts. Because the truth is, people treat you based on what you accept. And when you silently walk away from anything that doesn't align with your values, without resentment, without explanation, that's when your standard speaks for itself. That's when others start to realize your silence wasn't weakness. It was clarity. And clarity is power. So if you're watching this and you're tired of being misunderstood, disrespected, or tested, remember, your worth doesn't need a speech. It just needs consistent action. You don't prove your value, you live it, quietly, steadily, stoically, and eventually, that presence becomes impossible to ignore. Number 6, the unexpected pull of mystery. You don't need to share every thought. A bit of unpredictability can be intoxicating. When she realizes she can't fully read you, she leans in. A Stoic man is an open book with selective pages, never a predictable novel. See, mystery isn't about playing games or hiding who you are. It's about depth. It's about knowing that not everything needs to be said, and not every emotion needs to be explained. The more you feel the need to overexpress or constantly reassure, the more predictable you become. And predictability dulls curiosity. Now think about this. Have you ever been around someone who seemed calm, composed, but you couldn't quite figure out what was going on behind their eyes? That quiet confidence, that restraint, it draws you in without effort. That's what we're talking about here. A Stoic man doesn't make noise to prove he matters. He speaks when it's meaningful. He's present, but not desperate to be understood. And ironically, that's exactly what makes others want to understand him. Let her wonder what you're thinking sometimes. Let her sit with a little curiosity. When you're not immediately available, when you're not always the first to speak or react, you give her something rare. Space to feel your absence and reflect on your presence. That's the unexpected pull. It's not about being distant. It's about being deliberate. And that's the kind of mystery that keeps her coming back. Not because you're playing hard to get, but because your inner world is rich enough to not always be on display. So next time you feel like explaining yourself, pause. Ask if it's necessary, or if it's just your ego wanting validation. A Stoic man knows his value isn't in how loudly he reveals himself, but in how deeply he lives without needing to. Number 7, valuing yourself first. When your self-worth isn't dependent on her opinion, it shakes the dynamic. She senses that your love is a choice, not a need. That's Stoicism in action, placing inner approval above external validation. And let's be real, this changes everything. When a man doesn't place his identity in someone else's hands, it forces her to see him differently. Not as someone chasing her attention, but as someone already whole without it. You stop trying to impress, and instead, you express. You're no longer seeking her to make you feel enough. You already feel grounded in who you are. Imagine this. 2 men walk into a room. One is looking around for approval, hoping to be liked. The other is simply present, content with himself, not arrogant, but at peace. Who do you think naturally commands more respect? It's the second one, because he values himself first. Stoicism teaches us to master our desires, not suppress them, but understand them. So, when you value yourself, you don't deny the connection, but you never let it become your anchor. If she pulls away, it doesn't wreck you. If she stays, it's appreciated, not worshipped. And here's the part most men overlook. When a woman feels that you can walk away with your dignity intact, she starts to lean in more. Not because you're playing a game, but because your peace isn't negotiable. That calm certainty? That's what makes you rare. And that's what she feels when you choose to value yourself first. So now, I want to hear from you. What does valuing yourself first look like in your life? Have you ever noticed how people respond differently when you stop seeking approval? Drop your thoughts below, or just type, "My peace isn't negotiable" in the comments if that line hit home. Your journey matters, and someone reading your comment might need that reminder too. Let's keep going, because the next shift builds directly on this quiet strength. Number 8, detachment from outcome. You're not chasing because you're not clinging to a specific result. Whether she stays or leaves, you remain at peace. This lack of neediness is powerful and rare. A Stoic knows, control what you can, accept what you can't, and never chase what doesn't flow toward you. Think about it. When your focus shifts from trying to make something happen to simply showing up as your best self, you unlock a different kind of strength. You're no longer reacting to every mood swing, every unanswered message, every shift in her energy. You're grounded in who you are, not in what she might do next. Imagine this. You text her, she doesn't reply. But instead of spiraling or overthinking, you continue with your day. Go to the gym, handle your business, stay present. That's detachment in action. It's not indifference, it's self-respect. A Stoic doesn't suppress his emotions. He understands them, then chooses his response. And that response is often stillness. Not everything demands a reaction. Not every silence needs to be filled. When a man learns to sit with uncertainty without trying to force closure or control the outcome, that's emotional strength at its highest level. Letting go of the need to convince her or prove your worth is not weakness, it's wisdom. You begin to realize that your value was never meant to be negotiated, so you don't fight to stay in a space where you're not freely welcomed. And here's what's ironic. The moment you detach from needing her to come back is often the moment she starts to wonder if you ever needed her at all. Your energy shifts. You stop asking, "What should I say to make her miss me?" and start living in a way that makes your presence felt even in absence. You're not cold, you're calm. You're not withdrawn. You're just no longer performing to earn connection. That balance, firm but free, is what makes a Stoic man unforgettable. You're not waiting for an outcome. You're living in alignment. And that, my friend, is the real power. Because when your peace is no longer up for negotiation, neither is your worth. Number 9. Calm in the face of her tests. When she tests your boundaries or emotions and you don't flinch, it makes her take you seriously. She realizes you're not easily moved, and that's a trigger for deeper attraction. A Stoic doesn't prove his worth, he embodies it. And the key here is this. She's not testing you to destroy you. She's testing to see if you're grounded enough to hold your frame when things get uncomfortable. Maybe she teases you to see how reactive you are. Maybe she pulled back emotionally for a day, just to feel your energy shift. But when you remain calm, when your mood doesn't depend on hers, she starts to feel something rare: security. Not because you chase, not because you over-explain, but because you don't waver. It's in those moments of challenge that your presence speaks louder than any words. You don't argue to defend your worth. You don't snap back to gain control. You simply are. You stand there with a steady gaze and a calm mind, like the Stoic who knows the storm is outside him, never within. That kind of emotional discipline isn't just attractive, it's magnetic. It shows her that while she can stir the waters, she can't shake your core. And ironically, that's when she starts to respect you more, trust you more, and lean in. Because she knows she's finally in the presence of a man who doesn't just say he's solid, he proves it by how he stays still when tested. And let's be honest, every woman, consciously or not, is looking for a man whose center doesn't crumble under pressure. Someone who doesn't need to control the moment because he's already in control of himself. When you stop trying to manage her reactions and start mastering your own, everything shifts. You become a mirror that reflects back calm, clarity, and confidence. She may push, she may withdraw, she may even act cold for a moment. But when your warmth doesn't turn to panic, when your vibe doesn't chase her validation, she feels it. And it speaks to something deeper in her: safety. She may not say it out loud, but deep down, she starts to trust the man who remains composed, not to impress her, but because that's simply who he is. So next time she tries to provoke a reaction, don't take it personally. See it as a mirror, reflecting how far you've come in your self-mastery. Let her see that your peace isn't negotiable. Let her learn, without a single word, that her tests are met not with resistance, but with quiet strength. That's the power of calm. That's the presence of a man who knows who he is. And in a world full of noise, that presence doesn't just stand out, it stands above. Number 10. Growth that doesn't include her. When you evolve without trying to show her, she feels the gap widening, and she wants to catch up. Your quiet improvement, physically, emotionally, spiritually, becomes the most irresistible trigger. A Stoic man evolves because it's who he is, not because he wants applause. He's not posting updates or dropping hints hoping she'll notice. He's in motion, not for attention, but for alignment with who he's meant to be. Think about it. You hit the gym not to get noticed, but to sharpen your discipline. You set boundaries, not to prove a point, but to protect your peace. You start reading, thinking deeper, building habits that strengthen your mind, and you don't say a word. That's where the power is. One day, she looks at you and realizes you're not where she left you. You're ahead, calmer, more grounded, focused. And the version of you she once knew, he's gone. See, Stoicism teaches us to focus only on what we can control, and growth is one of those things. You're not growing to win her back. You're growing because stagnation feels like a betrayal to your own potential. And ironically, that's what draws her in. The fact that you didn't chase, didn't explain, didn't seek her approval, just moved forward with quiet strength. That's the moment she starts wondering, what did I miss while I was distracted? And that question stays with her longer than any message you could have sent. So keep going. Let your growth speak, not to her, but to the future you're building. And if she happens to see it from afar, let her. You don't need her to catch up. You just need to stay true to your path. And now, I want to hear from you. Because this kind of growth isn't just about relationships, it's about identity. Have you ever felt that inner shift when you stopped evolving for someone else and started doing it for you? That moment when you realized you no longer needed to be seen to feel valuable? If so, share your experience in the comments, or just type, "My growth doesn't need an audience." I'd love to know where you are in your own journey. Let's keep the conversation going. Number 11. Reversal. When you let her chase. This is the final switch. You stop chasing, not as a tactic, but as a truth. You're content. You've let go. And that's when the dynamic flips, because she now feels what you used to feel. A Stoic man doesn't chase love. He attracts it by walking in alignment with his values. And here's the beauty of it. When your energy is no longer moving toward her, she begins to notice the absence. What once felt certain now feels distant. The comfort of your pursuit fades, and for the first time, she starts wondering, what happened? Why isn't he chasing anymore? That quiet pullback doesn't come from bitterness. It comes from clarity, from peace. You're no longer trying to prove yourself. You've stopped showing up for someone who didn't match your effort. And now she's the one left replaying the moments you gave freely. The care, the attention, the presence she never had to ask for. Think about it like this. The man who stands still in his purpose doesn't need to run after anything. The Stoics believed in apatheia, a calm indifference to what's outside your control. You can care without clinging. You can love without losing yourself. That's the kind of energy that shifts everything. When she realizes you're no longer orbiting around her, she either rises to meet you or watches you become unreachable. And often, that reversal stings. Not because you forced it, but because you grew past the need to be chosen. You became the chooser, not out of pride, but from understanding your worth. So when she starts texting more, asking questions, showing up in subtle ways, it's not a coincidence. It's the ripple of your detachment. You stopped chasing her, and now she's chasing the version of you that no longer needs her to feel complete. So here's the bottom line. The more grounded you are in who you are, the more she feels drawn to that steady presence. You don't have to beg, impress, or prove. Just embody the man who respects himself enough not to chase what isn't flowing toward him. That's the quiet power of Stoicism. It doesn't seek validation. It becomes the kind of energy that others can't ignore. If this resonated with you, drop a comment below. Tell me which trigger hit the hardest, or simply type, "I choose presence over pursuit." Don't forget to like this video if it helped you shift your mindset, and make sure to check out the next videos on screen. They'll take this even deeper.